You see an apartment listing online. It's perfect. Great light, good neighborhood, right price. You send a message, and the landlord asks you to tell them a little about yourself. Seems innocent enough, right? But what you write back and what they do with that information is governed by a powerful and often misunderstood set of laws. In the next 9 minutes, you'll learn the subtle questions that are illegal for a landlord to ask and the one major loophole they think they can use to discriminate. And that loophole? It has a fatal flaw that almost no one talks about. So, get comfortable. This is about more than just finding a place to live. It's about your rights. The foundation for all of this is the Fair Housing Act, officially Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968. It was passed just 1 week after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was a monumental piece of legislation designed to outlaw housing discrimination. At its core, it established 7 protected classes. Think of these as the 7 sacred grounds. A landlord, seller, or lender cannot make a decision based on any of them. The first 2 are race and color. These are the original bedrock protections. It seems obvious today, but before 1968, a landlord could flat out say, I don't rent to people of your race. The Fair Housing Act made that explicitly illegal. Next are religion and national origin. You cannot be denied housing because you're Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, or atheist. You can't be turned away because your accent sounds different or because your last name is from another country. Then comes sex. This protection was added in 1974 and it prohibits discrimination based on gender. And here's where we get to the ones that trip people up most often. The last 2 are familial status and disability, added in 1988. Familial status means you can't be discriminated against for having children under 18. That no kids allowed policy you sometimes see in older building rules. Illegal. A landlord can't steer a family to a ground floor unit or refuse to rent them a 1-bedroom apartment if they're willing to live there. The only exception is for housing specifically designated for seniors, like 55 plus communities. The National Fair Housing Alliance reports that familial status discrimination is one of the most common complaints they receive, with thousands filed every year. It's a quiet but persistent barrier for countless families. The final protected class is disability, and this one is huge. It covers both physical and mental disabilities. A landlord cannot refuse to rent to someone because they use a wheelchair, have a guide dog, or have a diagnosed mental health condition. But it goes further than that. The law requires landlords to make what are called reasonable accommodations and allow for reasonable modifications. A reasonable accommodation is a change in rules or policies. For example, providing a designated parking space closer to the entrance for a tenant with a mobility impairment. Or, and this is a big one, waiving a no pets policy for an emotional support animal. The key here is that an assistance animal is not a pet under the law. A reasonable modification is a physical change to the property, like installing grab bars in a bathroom or a ramp to the front door. The tenant usually has to pay for the modification, but the landlord has to allow it. So that's the easy win. Race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, and disability. Remember those 7. They are your shield. Okay, so refusing to rent to someone for those reasons is the obvious stuff. But here's where it gets interesting and where most violations actually happen. In the subtle stuff. It's not about what a landlord says, but what they do. Have you ever heard of steering? It's when a real estate agent or landlord guides potential renters or buyers toward or away from certain neighborhoods based on their protected class. It sounds like this. Oh, you have kids? There's a great neighborhood on the south side of town that's much more family friendly. Or to a minority couple, you might be more comfortable in this part of the city. It can seem helpful on the surface, but it's illegal. It perpetuates segregation and limits housing choices based on prejudice, not on the buyer's actual financial qualifications or stated preferences. Another subtle violation is in the advertising. An ad that says perfect for young professionals or quiet building, ideal for singles, could be seen as discriminating against families with children. An ad that says Christian home seeking same discriminates based on religion. The language has to be neutral. It should describe the property, not the ideal tenant. Then, there's the insidious practice of providing different information. Imagine 2 people call about an apartment. One has a local accent, the other has a foreign accent. The landlord tells the first person the apartment is available and schedules a tour. He tells the second person it was just rented. That's a classic Fair Housing Act violation, proven time and again by testers sent from HUD and fair housing organizations. 2019 study by the Urban Institute showed that real estate agents showed white home buyers 17% more listings than equally qualified black home buyers. 17%. It's not a bug in the system, it's a feature that has been coded in for decades. If this is clicking for you and you're realizing how widespread these issues can be, a quick subscribe helps me keep making these videos. And the part you've been waiting for, the biggest surprise in housing law, is coming up right now. All right, remember how I said a landlord can't discriminate based on those 7 classes? I wasn't being entirely truthful. There is one major, shocking exception written directly into the law. It's known as the Mrs. Murphy Exemption, and it states that an owner-occupied building with 4 or fewer units is exempt from the Fair Housing Act's rules on discrimination. Let me say that again. If you live in a building that has 4 or fewer apartments and the owner lives in one of them, they can legally refuse to rent to you based on your race, religion, sex, or familial status. They can look you in the eye and say, I don't rent to families with kids, and under the Fair Housing Act, that would be legal. The logic was that in a small shared living situation, a property owner had a greater right to privacy and freedom of association. It's a massive loophole, but here's the catch. They can't advertise their discriminatory preference. They can't post an ad saying no Catholics. They just can do it. But that's not the end of the story. This is the part that even some landlords don't know. The Mrs. Murphy exemption has a kryptonite. It's a law that's over 100 years older than the Fair Housing Act itself. It's Section 1982 of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. It's short, powerful, and to the point. It states that all citizens have the same right to inherit, purchase, lease, sell, hold, and convey real and personal property as a white citizen. All citizens. In 1968, the same year the Fair Housing Act was passed, the Supreme Court case Jones versus Alfred H. Mayer Company affirmed that this old law prohibits all racial discrimination in the sale or rental of property with no exceptions. None. So what does that mean? It means the Mrs. Murphy exemption is a paper tiger when it comes to race. A landlord in a 4-unit building might think they can refuse to rent to you because you're Black or Asian or Hispanic, citing the Fair Housing Act. But they can't, because the Civil Rights Act of 1866 overrides it. Once you see it this way, you can't unsee it. The system has a loophole, but history provides a backstop. A landlord can still legally use the Mrs. Murphy exemption to discriminate based on religion or sex or familial status. But the original sin of housing discrimination, race, is absolutely, unequivocally off limits, always. So there you go. The 7 protected classes that form your shield. The subtle violations like steering and discriminatory ads that are far more common than you think. And the one major exemption that allows for discrimination, but with a fatal flaw that renders it powerless against racial bias. You now understand the basic architecture of your housing rights better than 99% of the population. You know that saying, we want a quiet tenant could be a problem, and you know why a 4-plex with a live-in owner operates under a different set of rules, at least partially. This isn't just trivia. It's knowledge that protects you, your family, and your community from unfair practices that have shaped our cities for generations. If you got value from this, share it with someone who's looking for a place to live. It might be the most important thing they watch all week. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We have a lot more to cover.